Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the January 18th monthly call with our local partners. As you're aware, we have some weather moving in this afternoon and this evening, and we're also tracking an additional weather event for Sunday. So I am immediately going to turn the call over to Justin from the National Weather Service and ask him to give us an update on what we can expect for weather. So Justin, thank you for joining us.
All right, thank you, Director. Let me share my screen here. Just a minute. Oh, it looks like, oh boy, it looks like it wants me to. I don't have permission to share my own screen. What is going on here? Just a minute. There we go. Let's try. That work? No, stop sharing that. My apologies. I am technical difficulties here.
Megan, just to keep us moving, I'm going to move on to some report outs from the section chiefs, and then we can come back to the weather once you get the presentation up, if that works.
Not a problem. That works for me.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to turn the call over to Dave Valancourt, who is the section chief for our REP program, while we get the weather up and running. And so, Dave.
Good afternoon, everybody. A couple rep updates for you. We have completed our traffic management internal review on all 17 communities, including our 8 shadow communities. So we've met our deadline for January. February, we'll be reaching out to those communities affected by that to sit down and start looking at your access control points and all of the information on those maps to make sure that the changes that we're looking at are going to work for you. We're about 3/4 of the way through our state agency plans. 6 out of the 10 state plans have been written, and we are still moving forward to our goal for that. So we will get that done by spring. And we are training a new group of bus drivers for our state transportation staging area. On our last exercise that we had with them, they asked us if they would give us some training so that they would know their roles exactly if they were called. And those are all of the bus drivers that we have within the state of New Hampshire. I was also asked to address a couple questions that we had from the communities with our disaster that we're trying to get. And one of the questions is, when is the paperwork due? It's a fluid operation that we're doing now. We've already done our initial damage assessments, which was getting a hold on whether we would ask FEMA to come in to support looking at our preliminary damage assessments. So it's fluid. Whatever cost you're incurring before your visit or after your visit, maintain that paperwork. Because if we do move forward and get a declaration, we will be looking for a second visit, and we'll be getting into the depth of it with time cards and invoices, etc. And the other question was, could you recap the level of detail required for our visits that we're having? So what we're trying to do is get an impact statement with our visits for the communities so that we can look at Cat A, B, C, and G damages. And what we're looking for is a snapshot of what you've had for damages so that we can validate them and move forward with our process. So that type of detail we're looking at right now. If we do get declared, we will be doing a deeper dive into that, and we'll be looking at costs incurred so far, photographs. So continue to track all of your costs associated with what you're doing with the disaster now. And we can start looking at those later on as well. And that's all I have, Director.
Thank you. I guess we're ready to go back to the weather. So Justin from the National Weather Service.
All right. I guess I'm going to rely here on Megan. Can you share your screen?
I think we're good.
All right, very good. Well, I appreciate it and thank you. Apologies and thanks for your patience with me. Pretty much a one-dimensional event is what we're really looking at here for the next 24 to 36 hours as rain and snow develop across the area this evening, kind of transition to snow tonight, and then just very gradually taper off during the day on Friday. So snow is the biggest impact. A little bit of sleet might mix in with the snow and even rain at the beginning over the southern part of the state. So that's the mixed precip part, but no icing, no real wind issues, no real coastal flooding issues. So next slide. All right, so there's the storm total snowfall, roughly 4 to 8 inches statewide. I think one of the things to keep in mind is even though the amounts, they're not blockbuster here by any stretch. One, we haven't seen a lot of snow so far this winter, and two, at least especially from south of Concord, I think the snow is going to be the heavy and wet variety, and we'll talk more about that in a minute. But that's going to be the thing to watch, because once you get 4 or 5 inches of heavy wet snow, you can start to bring some limbs down. And so 4 to 8 inches of snow, most of it again tonight. And into the first part of Friday morning, and then tapering off during the day. Next slide. All right, so here's the ice graphic. Very almost didn't want to include it. There's so little, but just to show right along the Mass borders where there could be a little bit of sleet. We don't expect any freezing rain or glaze, so there shouldn't be any concern from that perspective. So it's really a snow event, and all the sleet's going to do is knock down the amounts a little bit. So that's why the amounts themselves were a little bit lower, closer to the Mass border. Next slide. All right, and here is that wet versus dry character of the snow. You see those red shadings under my box there, south of Concord. That's where I think, again, 4 or 5 inches of heavy wet snow will be enough to bring limbs down, and that may cause some power outage issues in those areas. The further north you go, the snow is going to get a little bit lighter, a little less wet. And so while the amounts they'll probably even be more, they'll probably be more like 6 to 8 inches in those areas. We don't expect any power outage issues up there because the snow won't be sticking to things as well. So that's just a key thing to keep in mind, given the amounts aren't that great. Next slide. All right, so when's it going to start? When's it going to end? Left-hand side, you see start times roughly mid-afternoon through the evening from south to north. The precipitation will gradually move into the area. Just looking in, it's moving into southwestern New England right now, so that's pretty much on track. And just remember, as it first gets going, and we'll look at it again in a minute, when it first gets going over the southern part of the state, it may start as rain. And when you see raindrops at the very beginning, don't be, thinking that maybe this snow event isn't going to happen. That's expected. It'll go over to snow tonight. So through the night, it snows. And then tomorrow, you see the end times really from during the afternoon hours, things will just slowly taper off. Next slide. And here is what I was saying about the type. You see that wintry mix shading there at the very beginning. This does not mean the precipitation is going to start as freezing rain. It's going to start really as a rain-snow mix, or even just plain rain near the seacoast and right along the Mass border for a little while. And by 7 p.m. this evening, you could still see some of that. So if you go to the next slide, you'll see by 1 a.m. that line collapses over to the coast and to the New Hampshire Mass border, we essentially go over to snow. It'll be snow the rest of the night after this, snow through the morning commute, but tapering off during the day on Friday. And we saw the end times earlier. So it's really the morning commute tomorrow is our biggest concern. The snow peak intensity is probably the second half of the night through daybreak, and then tapering off even during the morning, like just slowly weakening. But it's going to impact the morning commute regardless. So next slide. All right, winds are not going to be an issue. You see maybe some gusts over 20 miles an hour, but this isn't going to be enough to blow or drift any snow. Really isn't going to be any cause for power outage concerns. Other than the fact that the winds, if they were a little stronger, they might help knock some of the snow off the trees, but they will not be that strong. So if that heavy wet snow does occur south of Concord, we could have some of those isolated power outages. Next slide. Also, temperatures are not that cold. They'll be in the 20s generally tonight and still through the day tomorrow. This is a minimum wind chills through tonight. So you'll see, teens, which really isn't a dangerous level for wind chills. It's cold. So obviously there's a little bit of exposure there if somebody's out and about, but really it's not a bitter cold system by any stretch. And so that is not a big concern for us here either. Next slide. All right, so here's our summary. So it's high confidence that's what's going to occur. The biggest impact, I mean, it starts late this afternoon, but really it's overnight through the morning commute Friday is when our biggest concerns are. 4 to 8 inches pretty much covers the entire state, maybe a little bit less in the very far north, maybe a little bit less right along the seacoast, but that captures it pretty well. Could see some spots, you know, some of the hilltops and whatnot reach 8 to 10 inches. That's not out of the question as well. Again, it may start as a mix there south of Concord, but it will transition to snow overnight tonight, and then you know, continue as snow through the morning Friday before coming to an end early Friday afternoon. No winds, no coastal flooding. So again, it's pretty much one-dimensional with that heavy wet snow aspect being our biggest concern. And then one more slide is just so it's on your radar for early next week, Sunday night and Monday, another system comes up the East Coast. It looks like we're going to finally start to make up for lost time this winter. And so you'll see I've kind of highlighted an area of another solid potential for greater than 6 inches, pretty much from Concord north, with that rain snow line likely playing a role again in the southeastern part of the state here, where it could be as much as 6 to 10 inches of snow, or it could be a cold rain. And so that's what we're going to be refining over the next 2 days as we get closer to that event. Other things to remember with this next system is we're at high astronomical tides. It's you probably hear it even termed as a nor'easter in the news. So there is some concern for at least minor coastal flooding. It will not be anything like our pre-Christmas event, but minor coastal flooding is possible with this. And the winds are going to be a little bit stronger with this one. The storm system itself will be stronger. So wind gusts 30 to 40 miles per hour look possible as this system kind of wraps up and heads out on Monday. So if you're thinking about commutes again, it's a Monday morning commute. Looks like it's probably going to have pretty substantial impacts, at least north of Concord. And then there could even be some pretty heavy rain over southern part of the state if it were to be rain. And that's where we're going to kind of refine the detail the next couple of days, is exactly where that rain snow line is. So just so you're aware, as you head into the upcoming weekend, that will be busy with weather again this Sunday night and Monday, and then possibly again by the middle of next week there may yet be another system, but I think 2 systems is enough for one call. So that's all I got today, and I know however you'd like to do questions there, I'd be happy to take them.
Thank you, Justin. Vanessa, if you can open us up for questions for the Weather Service before we move on, that'd be great.
Yes, can you hear me okay?
Absolutely.
Okay. So if you are on the phone, it's *5 to raise your hand and *6 to unmute yourself. If you are within the Teams platform, if you raise your hand, I will come and find you and unmute you. I'm not seeing anything, Director.
Okay, Justin, I guess you got off easy today, bringing 2 storms to us in one call, and we appreciate you sharing that information with us and giving us situational awareness as we move into the weekend. So thank you.
Very good. Thank you very much, Director.
Yep. I'm next going to move on with our section reports, and I would continue with Bob Christensen from Preparedness and Response. Bob?
Good afternoon, all. 3 different categories of a few bullets. From training, our training officer, Rich Cloutier, offers in the midst of his training bulletin that goes out, G191. This is a brand new course that we are teaching. This is a great course a lot of EMDs have been waiting for and asking about. It is ICS EOC interface. And so we ourselves, the HSEM staff, will be providing this instruction and looking forward to that. Please just contact us. We can get that scheduled out as delivered on site for your team. Our AWR 328 course is a good class coming up on February 22. Now, this is all hazards preparedness for animals in disaster. That's important because as you consider your warming centers and shelters, particularly areas that have large numbers of domestic animals, etc., there's implications to that, right? So that's a good course coming up on February 22. And finally, on February 23, MGT 448 is similar, all hazards planning for animal, agricultural, and food-related disasters. So some good stuff coming up. Again, all of that and much more in the training bulletins that go out. And in fact, to that end, from Deb Yeager, our exercise and training coordinator, reminds you that if you are not getting that training bulletin or the exercise newsletter, which is brand new, Taylor Jakes, our exercise coordinator, just we rolled out our first monthly exercise newsletter. Just go ahead and reach out to us at exercisetraining@dosnh.gov. I can put that in the chat here in a second when I'm done, in case you didn't catch that email address if you're not getting that. Any town that would like to get together to talk about exercises, that's our bread and butter. It's what we do, and we love to come alongside of towns. And no matter where you're at, crawl, walk, run, at the very beginning of things, you might have a new apparatus, a new plan, a new procedure that you'd like to kind of chart out all the way up to and including full-scale exercises, which can take a year and a half to plan. So there's new grant stipulations that we're now operating under. And so the sooner you reach out to us, the better. It helps us plan. And again, Deb Yeager will be your contact. We are working on helping locals use HSEEP, or Homeland Security Exercise Evaluation Program, as guidelines to do their own exercises. And Rich Kluger has, again, lots of good training associated with that and other courses. If any of this is interesting and you are a little not knowing what we're talking about, brand new to the training exercise, you can always go to HSEM's Resource Center on our website. We try to make that one-stop shopping. And then moving into Meg Hoskins' domain, the planning and operations areas, relative to WebEOC, we're in the process of building out different boards. But if you have special needs or requests relative to WebEOC, do please reach out to Neil Canton, our WebEOC coordinator. We can certainly have a conversation. We really coming out of COVID, and even before COVID started, we'd already started having conversations. How do we really make WebEOC really useful for our customers in the localities? That's very important to us, is to really kind of ramp up that usability for you. So if you've got ideas, we're all ears. Relative to that After Action Board, it now gives us the ability to gather data on the overall trends over multiple events. And this is good because as we look at training going forward, etc., we can see trend lines, so recurring themes enable us to look at possible training to bring into our state as well. But certainly After Action Boards are there to within WebEOC to use. And finally, the last thing I have is WebEOC dashboard. This would be something that is coming along the pike. Juvari, which is the software company that owns WebEOC, they're working on a new look for end users. When implemented, it'll allow us to customize what you see when you first log into WebEOC. The idea being that towns could log in and see everything that you are concerned about in one place. The more information will be likely available coming from Juvari in quarter number 2 of this year. So that is it for me, barring any questions.
Thank you, Bob. Moving on to business and finance, Matt.
Good afternoon, everybody. Just one quick point I'd like to make. We've obviously been through quite a bit of transition. I'm sure most of you are aware. As we're bringing new people in and up to speed, I just would like to ask that as we approach different deadlines with period of performance end dates for EMPG in particular is what I'm referencing, that whether you're working with my staff or your field rep, that you get us the information that we need as quickly as you can so that we can get that all processed, so we don't bump against the deadline and end up having to lose that funding. That's all I have. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Matt. So a couple of announcements from my desk today. We continue to operate about a 25% vacancy rate here at HSEM. We're continuing to recruit and try to attract new talent. Important to you as one of our partners here today. So our EMPG program manager, Bob Keller, has come over from DMV and he joined the team this last week. And then our business and finance assistant chief, Shiloh Casey, she actually joined us last month and is settling in. So obviously our our EMPG program is going under review and hopeful to highlight new processes and improvements in that area quickly. The next school task force meeting is scheduled for February 21st and will actually be held over at our annex facility on Triangle Park Drive, so that invitation will be forthcoming. I did want to just briefly discuss the damage assessment program that is going on currently for the December 22nd through 25th storm. Teams are starting to make their way around the state. As of today, we are anticipating visiting Belknap, Carroll, Coos, Grafton, Stratford, Sullivan counties, which have all reached their threshold. Cheshire, Hillsborough, and Rockingham currently have not met the threshold for county. I did want to put out one plug. If you are a community in Rockingham County, please make sure that you're examining your damage and your initial damage assessment, because we are really on the bubble as to being able to look at Rockingham County as a potential addition. So again, if you're in Rockingham County, please make sure that you're being a good neighbor and putting in your damage assessment form. I did receive one question that was basically, is a consistent question, and we will bring this forward. So the question that was proposed, is there any way to streamline the process and the amount of documentation that needs to be submitted to FEMA? As you're aware, the preliminary damage assessment is a joint effort between us and FEMA. I announced last month that we were, last storm call, that we would be doing a joint review of this storm, and this would not be a state-led review. And that basically the paperwork and the information that is needed is determined by federal guidance, right? So we're working closely with FEMA to try to streamline this. We're trying to add some stakeholder support through our field services group and basically provide as much support as we can to make sure that we're getting you to a spot where you're successful. We're working to make this process as efficient as possible, and we appreciate your patience as we go through this. One last question that I'm going to actually kick over to our recovery area was asked was, what is the minimum amount to receive a reimbursement? What work is eligible for reimbursement, et cetera. So Danny, if you're on the call, if you could address that for the group, that would be great.
Absolutely. Thank you, Director. So as of right now, we are out with FEMA doing preliminary damage assessments in the community in person and virtually. So as for eligibility, it is a little too soon to discuss that. Where right now the PDAs are looking at more of a high level overview of your damages, as our focus right now is to make sure that all of the counties and the state meet the minimum threshold for a federal declaration request. So if you have not yet provided your damage impact to your local, your community liaison, please do so as soon as possible, as we do have a deadline to get these preliminary damage assessments completed so FEMA can validate the cost and we can meet our deadline as the state to submit a declaration request to the federal government. If we do meet the minimum thresholds for counties and states, and we do get a federal declaration, the minimum project threshold is $3,800 now. And the reimbursement share will be 75% from the federal government and 25% from the applicant. And if you guys have any other questions, feel free to reach out to the public assistance team here at HSEM. We'll get back to you and find you answers.
Thank you, Danny. I did want to place on everybody's radar screen before we turn it over for questions. And I should have covered this under weather. We are anticipating holding a stakeholders call on Sunday afternoon, and certainly be on the lookout for that invite as we move forward and we monitor the weather. That's still a couple days out, but we are anticipating with the impact on the Monday commute to at least hold a call on Sunday afternoon for your information. So I'm going to turn the call back over to Vanessa, and I am going to open it up for questions from the group.
All right, everyone. So once again, if you're on the phone, you can press *5 to raise your hand and *6 to unmute yourself. And if you're within the Teams app, just raise your hand and we'll come and find you and Director, I'm not seeing anything.
Okay, I want to take a minute and thank everybody for joining us today. We had one hand go up here at the last minute. Vanessa, I don't know if you see that.
Yes, hold on just a minute. We actually have two hands up. Oh, hold on. All right, go ahead. I don't know who it is. It just says EMD. Go ahead. You should be able to unmute yourself now and ask your question.
Control Shift M, Control Shift M. Trying.
We can hear you.
We can hear you now.
Okay, good. John Fisher, EMD in Hebron, New Hampshire, and for a number of decades, just till this last year, retired as the fire chief. And one of the issues that, having been through several disasters, has to do with call firefighters, and it's probably one of my chief concerns. In our town and maybe some others, small towns, call firefighters become really the first responders in a lot of these disasters, put in a lot of time and cost the town considerable money. But FEMA feels, I guess, for reasons that I've never been able to get an answer to, that call firefighters are not eligible for any reimbursement, and that continues to boggle my mind.
So Chief, I appreciate your comment, and I will share with you that I also received a comment from another municipality in the state regarding call firefighters, and that is something I will make sure that we share with FEMA and try to get you that answer as to why that is not a recoverable piece. As you've very well noted, this is something that's been out there for quite some time, so I appreciate your feedback on that.
Thank you.
Vanessa, do we have any other additional questions?
I am not seeing any other questions.
Okay. Well, at the height of the call today, we had almost 90 people online, so I appreciate your dedication to the state and your communities, and would note that our next call for our monthly call will be February 16th at noontime, and please be on the lookout for the Sunday afternoon call regarding the weather. So again, I appreciate your time and your efforts, and look forward to talking with you soon. Thank you.